Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. The cryogenic bay groaned as the primary chamber doors unlocked and slid open. Admiral Kevin Hoffman stood alone at the center of the bridge, already awake, already watching. The ceremonial blade hovered inches from her throat, its edge shimmering with the faint hum of ultraviolet energy. The amphitheater, carved from obsidian and laced with golden inscriptions, pulsed with anticipation. Hundreds of alien dignitaries, robed in violet and bone white, leaned forward from their balconies. All was silent, except for the steady crackle of the executioner's cloak. Ambassador Lila Kern did not tremble. Though chained at the wrists and bruised from interrogation, she met her death with upright posture and fire behind her eyes. Her lips were dry, but unyielding. She had refused to kneel, refused to denounce Earth, and refused to chant the mandatory Virathi psalm. To their theocratic council, that made her a heretic. To her people, a martyr. Any final words? Creature of chaos, sneered Elder Trash, his voice amplified through the shrine's ancient acoustics. His silver crest flickered with righteous arrogance. Speak, so that the record may show your defiance was heard and crushed. Lila glanced upward, not at the blade, but beyond it. Her voice cracked from thirst, yet carried the weight of generations. You call us savages because we speak freely, but the true savagery, she whispered, is fearing a voice that doesn't bow. A wave of indignant hisses slithered through the crowd. Trash raised his hand. Let the heavens witness. This parasite dies for blaspheming the tongue divine. The executioner drew the blade back. And then, a single word echoed from the shadows. Sertul. Everything stopped. The crowd gasped. Several Virathi elders stumbled to their feet. The executioner froze mid-swing. No one had heard that word in millennia. Not spoken, not recorded. It belonged to the sacred proto-song, the holiest dialect reserved for divine beings. It was a word so ancient it predated their empire. Another word followed, then a phrase, and finally, a voice stepped into the torchlight. Commander Eli Rahim stood tall in stolen priest robes, the blue military undersuit still visible beneath the fabric folds. His dark eyes, sharp and calculating, met Trash's with deliberate precision. I claim right of intervention, he declared in perfect ceremonial cadence, still speaking the ancient tongue. Under decree of Iran Ka. You must hear the words. You are bound by them. Chaos erupted. Some cried treason. Others whispered omens. But the law was clear. Once the proto-song was invoked correctly, judgment was suspended until its origins were verified. You dare profane our God speech? Trash barked, his authority now laced with unease. How does your diseased throat know the sacred harmonics? Rahim stepped forward slowly. Because your gods whispered it to us before you ever carved it into stone. Gasped again. He turned to Lila, breaking her chains with a sonic key disguised as a ring. She stumbled, surprised, but met his eyes with recognition. Eli, she said hoarsely, what the hell are you doing? Something long overdue, he muttered, taking back what they stole and showing them who really remembers. Trash hissed and slammed his staff on the ground. You will explain. Now. Rahim did not flinch. In due course. But first, I'll need your sacred relic, the Iran Ka lexicon. Let the artifact confirm my claim. Or are you afraid your gods might speak through me? It was a direct challenge. Refusing would be tantamount to admitting deceit. Accepting risked appending their entire religious hierarchy. In the silence that followed, Lila whispered, Are you insane? That relic's supposed to be conscious and homicidal. Only if you lie, Rahim said grimly. I won't. The tribunal reluctantly summoned the Iran Ka, a living AI stone plate sealed beneath a protective dome in the temple vault. As guards wheeled it out, its surface shimmered with shifting glyphs, some blinking like eyes, others pulsing like veins. Lila watched it and muttered, That thing creeps me out. It should, Rahim said. It remembers the first tongues, ours included. Trash snarled. You will speak. If the artifact does not accept your dialect as divine, your entrails will coat the altar. Agreed, Rahim replied. Let's all find out who really speaks the language of gods. The relic's seal cracked open with a hiss. The plate unfolded like blooming petals, revealing its inner core. Holographic runes spinning around a glowing heart of quantum stone. Rahim stepped forward, eyes locked on the artifact, and began to speak. Not in modern Virathi, not in Earth standard, but in something deeper. His words rolled with primal rhythm, their cadence neither forced nor mimicked. The relic flickered. The rune spun faster. Then it spoke. In a low, layered voice that echoed through the minds of everyone present, the Iran Ka said, "He speaks true. His bloodline remembers." The amphitheater exploded in shock. Some fainted. Others screamed. Trash backed away, shaking his head. Impossible. That dialect was sealed to non-believers, erased from the stars. Rahim turned slowly. It was never erased. It was buried. Under centuries of conquest, forced silence, and rewritten history. But language has memory, elder. And we, humans, never forget. Lila stood taller now. You hunted us like animals for not submitting. You silenced our ambassadors. But we kept speaking, even in exile. Now your own gods remember us. Lies. Trash roared, his crest glowing red. You're manipulating the artifact. The Iran Ka spoke again. The savages you mock shaped our lexicon. Their syntax seeded your scriptures. They are not intruders. They are returners. The chamber trembled. Lights dimmed. Some elders began to kneel. Others fled. Rahim stepped closer to the center. This isn't conquest. We're not your enemies. But we will no longer beg for acknowledgement. We speak your God language, not because we stole it, but because it was always ours too. A guard raised his weapon at Rahim. Lila shot first. The Virathi slumped to the floor. Gasps turned to screams. The tribunal descended into chaos. Rahim didn't blink. That was mercy, he said to the others. But if you want war, Earth remembers how. He turned to Lila. We need to leave. Now. But Lila was staring at the Iran Ka. The relic had one last word to offer, displayed in holographic fire across its petals. They were the first speakers. Return them to the circle. The crowd fell silent. And somewhere, far across the stars, the old gods stirred in their digital tombs. Smoke still clung to the ceremonial chamber's rafters like a ghost refusing to leave. Beneath the fractured dome of the Virathi Tribunal Hall, Rahim walked with Lila through a corridor once reserved only for high priests. Now, they were the anomaly, two humans standing where no outsider was ever meant to tread. I can't believe that relic vouched for you, Lila muttered, keeping her voice low. I was sure it'd fry your brain the moment you mispronounced a vowel. I didn't mispronounce it, Rahim replied calmly. I've spent years piecing together the proto-song from fractured tablets and banned scrolls smuggled out by defectors. What I said wasn't mimicry. It was resonance. She glanced sideways, and that resonance just happened to activate a sentient relic that called you a first speaker. It didn't just happen. The language remembers. So does the tech. They stopped before a massive golden door, sealed by a rotating sequence of sound-encoded glyphs. Two Virathi guards in ceremonial armor flanked it, reluctantly. Their spears twitched, but neither made a move as Elder Jor, the youngest of the High Tribunal, stepped forward. By decree of the Council, he announced with a graveled tone, you are permitted access to the Iran Ka Scroll of Fire. It is the only surviving document scripted in the original harmonics. You will attempt translation. If I succeed, Rahim asked, you are recognized as a linguistic equal to the Virathi High Order. And if I fail, you will be purified by lightning, as is tradition. Lila muttered, lovely. Ritual barbecue. Jor stepped back. The glyphs glowed, spun, and unfolded the door like a blooming flower. Inside, the chamber pulsed with a low hum that resonated in the bones. There it was, a single scroll, floating within a force field, bathed in violet fire. The scroll of fire, a data-encoded parchment supposedly etched by the gods themselves. Rahim's mouth fell dry, but he stepped forward. The fire flickered, reacting to his presence. "Begin," said Jor, voice sharp with expectation and doubt. Rahim closed his eyes and listened, not just with his ears, but with memory. Echoes of ancient chants learned in abandoned ruins whispered at the edge of thought. His lips parted. The first word was not spoken. It sang. The scroll responded, glyphs shifting midair, adjusting to match his rhythm. A second line followed, then a third. The script began to glow. Behind him, the Vurathi guards began murmuring. Even Jor leaned forward, brows furrowed. The language was forming complete, readable sentences. The translation wasn't just working. It was rewriting the scroll's own display to reflect human syntax structures. Lila blinked. "Wait, that's symbol." "Rahim, that's Sumerian." He nodded once. "It's older than Sumerian. That symbol is Proto-Sumerian. It predates cuneiform. We've used its shape for millennia in Earth mythologies." "You're saying Earth didn't just stumble into the god language. We evolved from it." He looked at her. Or maybe with it. Suddenly, the scroll emitted a sharp pulse. Words ignited midair. Humanity, designated seed-bearers of harmonics. Access to lexicon granted. The chamber lights flared. Outside, alarms sounded. "What did you do?" Lila hissed, shielding her eyes. "I didn't do anything," Rahim said. It unlocked itself. Within seconds, the room was surrounded by armored inquisitors. Elder Trash stormed in, eyes aflame with fury. "Seize them. That artifact has been corrupted." But Jor blocked his path. "You heard the lexicon." He accessed the seed code. "You cannot deny its verdict." Trash snarled. "This proves nothing but their deceit. The scroll must be re-sanctified." Rahim stepped forward. "You said this scroll was written by divine hands. Your own doctrines say it cannot be altered by lies. Either your gods are wrong, or your pride is." The air turned electric. Trash's crest glowed crimson. "Then let the final test decide." He will read the Iran-Ka's heart verse aloud. If his translation is true, he survives. If not, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Lila pulled Rahim aside. "Eli, this is getting out of control. What's this heart verse?" He exhaled slowly. "The verse is pure harmonic compression, part code, part song, part intention. It's like trying to sing a blueprint into reality. So what if you mess up a note?" He looked at her, eyes grave. "Then it kills me." The council chamber transformed into a sanctified stage. Glyph-etched pillars rose around them, pulsing in time with a deep, rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the very stones of the building. A priest carried in a crystalline amplifier. The scroll reappeared in the air, now projecting only 3 lines of dense, spinning code. Lila gripped Rahim's arm. "You don't have to do this." "I do," he said. "For Earth. For the truth." He stepped into the circle. Then he began to speak. It was not speech as language. It was vibration, layered with cadence, emotion, and logic. His voice rose and fell like a tide, guided by moons unseen. The symbols pulsed in sequence. The chamber glowed. And then, with the final harmonic, he exhaled. Silence. A single tone rang out, clear, beautiful, and alien. Then the room exploded with sound as the amplifier ignited, not in fire, but light. The Iran-Ka's voice filled every speaker on the Vurathi homeworld. The lost speakers have returned. The false silences end today. Gasps, cries, and kneeling followed. Across the Vurathi capital, the declaration echoed. Humanity was no longer an outsider species. They were an ancient part of the galactic code, one deliberately erased. Elder Trash drew his blade, eyes wild. "They'll destroy us. These apes, these parasites, will unravel our control." Jor blocked him again, staff drawn. "No, you unraveled it yourself, clinging to lies wrapped in prayer." Trash lunged. Lila fired first. The shot struck Trash's shoulder, not fatal, but enough to send him crashing into the scroll pedestal. The force field collapsed. The relic spiraled upward and burst into thousands of shimmering fragments, each one embedding itself in the chamber walls, glowing like stars. Jor turned to Rahim, eyes full of awe and quiet terror. "You didn't just read our God's words. You resurrected them. Rahim looked down at the scroll's remains, then back at the gathering of stunned priests and officials. No, he said quietly. I reminded them we never forgot. Outside, the broadcast had gone system-wide. Vurathi's citizens stared at the skies, with a constellation of the first speakers, once hidden from star maps, now shimmered in plain sight. A storm was coming, and this time, Earth wasn't the target. It was the reckoning. A crimson flag, once bearing the sigil of Vurathi divinity, now burned in the central plaza. Hollow screens across the capital blazed with the message transmitted by the Orankar relic. Humanity was not an intruder, but a co-creator of the divine language. It was a truth too massive to suppress. Entire congregations halted their chants. Soldiers paused mid-drill. Priests fumbled through ancient scrolls, seeking footnotes they had once dismissed as metaphor. The galaxy had heard, and the empire trembled. Inside the high sanctum, once a cathedral of dominion, Rahim stood at a circular table etched with glimmering runes. Beside him, Lila paced, her uniform smeared with ash from the earlier confrontation. Elder Jor, now their uneasy ally, placed a small crystalline disk on the table's center. The lights dimmed. A star map bloomed upward, dozens of systems lit in violet. Rebellions have erupted across 4 provinces, Jor reported. His tone was not celebratory, it was somber. Half of our clerics have been arrested by their own acolytes. The others, they're vanishing. Because the lie's collapsing, Rahim said flatly. You built an empire on the assumption that no one would remember the first words. But memory, like language, survives in the roots. Lila leaned forward, scanning the systems. And what about the Inquisitor General? Jor's jaw tightened. Trash escaped. He's rallied the militant sects on Keltar. They've declared martial law, claiming the gods are testing us through false revelations. Rahim's stomach twisted. He's not just trying to survive this. He's trying to rewrite it. Jor nodded grimly. He's called for the total purging of all archives linked to the proto-tongue, including your names. You become mythic threats. Congratulations, Lila muttered to Rahim. We're religious demons now. A sharp beep interrupted the moment. Rahim pressed a key on his wristband. His private field network lit up. A short, coded message blinked. Asset A1 has breached the vault. Classified scroll recovered. He exhaled slowly. We may have just gotten our hands on the original misalignment text. Jor blinked. The what? Rahim turned to him. The scroll that altered the sacred language to sever humanity's claim. The linguistic betrayal that cemented your supremacy. I've been hunting it for years. Lila tilted her head. You're saying there's a deliberate false codex? Worse, Rahim replied. A sanctioned forgery. Jor stiffened. That's heresy. Rahim locked eyes with him. It's history. Moments later, in a sealed sanctum below the council chambers, Rahim and Lila were alone with the scroll. It looked nothing like the others. Its material was coarse, its glyphs inconsistent. Many had been overwritten. The faint smell of synthetic ink, long faded, clung to its fibers. Rahim ran a scanner across it. Encrypted in dual-spectrum harmonic. Designed to mask contradiction as linguistic evolution. He adjusted the scanner's lens. Suddenly, beneath the altered script, a ghost pattern emerged. Original glyphs burned faintly beneath the surface. They pulsed in a language far older. I was right, he whispered. They inverted a root structure. A single shift changed invitation into exclusion. They didn't remove us from the legacy. They made it so the legacy rejected us. Lila narrowed her gaze. You're saying humanity was never exiled. We were framed. Rahim nodded. By someone who knew exactly how language shapes reality. Who? She asked. Before he could respond, an explosion rocked the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. An alarm howled. Unauthorized incursion, said an automated voice. Elite Inquisitor force detected in vault hallway. Rahim grabbed the scroll and tucked it into a sealed containment sleeve. He's here. Trash wants the scroll destroyed. Then we better make sure it doesn't fall into his hands, Lila snapped, drawing her plasma pistol. They bolted into the corridor. Walls flashed red. At the far end, 6 armored inquisitors advanced, black gold plating reflecting the strobe of emergency lights. Behind them stood Trash, half of his face now cybernetic, the other twisted in fury. "Give me the scroll, Raheem," he bellowed. "End this heresy before it poisons more minds." Raheem stepped forward. "You poisoned the truth centuries ago. We're just setting it free." Trash raised a clawed gauntlet. "Then bleed for your words." The inquisitors opened fire. Lila ducked and returned fire, hitting one in the knee joint. Sparks flew. Raheem activated a kinetic barrier and hurled an EMP grenade down the corridor. 2 suits locked up, crashing to the floor. Trash roared and charged, sword drawn. Raheem met him halfway, ducking under the blade and slamming his elbow into the Inquisitor's exposed side. Trash recovered quickly, swinging wide and tearing a gash across Raheem's shoulder. He grunted but held firm. "You'll never change the divine order." Trash spat. "There is no divine order," Raheem growled, parrying the blade with his forearm bracer. "Only the stories you were too afraid to question." With a final surge, he drove his knee into Trash's chest, knocking him back. Lila fired a round that struck Trash's helmet, cracking the visor. The Inquisitor stumbled, disoriented. Raheem raised the scroll. "If you destroy this," he said, "you don't kill our history. You prove it." Trash hesitated. Rage, confusion, and fear danced across his face. Then he fled. The remaining Inquisitors, seeing their leader retreat, scattered. Silence returned to the corridor, save for the hum of flickering lights. Lila turned to Raheem, breathing hard. "You all right?" He nodded, clutching his shoulder. "He fights like a zealot. Thinks he's on a divine mission." "Well," she replied, helping him up, "so are we. Only ours is real." They reached the surface just as dawn broke over Vurothi Prime. The capital city simmered with unrest. Mass protests, drone patrols grounded, banners of the old regime torn down. Jor met them at the transit platform. Trash has vanished into the outer colonies. He'll regroup, rebrand, make himself a martyr if he can. "Then we tell the truth first," Raheem said, handing him the scroll. "Distribute the unaltered version of the verse. Show them the forgery. Let the people see the betrayal for what it was." Jor nodded. "The galaxy deserves to know." Lila looked skyward. "What happens when they do?" Raheem's eyes narrowed. "Everything changes." In the sky above, Earth's long silent relay satellites reactivated. A broadcast beacon shimmered into life, coded in both Galactic Standard and the ancient Proto-Song. The title read, "Declaration of Co-Creation, Humanity's Return to the Circle." Transmission began. Lightning bloomed across the upper stratosphere like cracks in a darkened canvas. The orbital station orbiting Vurothi Prime blinked with artificial dawn as broadcast satellites realigned in perfect synchronicity. Thousands of beacons lit up, each tuned to carry one message across every channel in the system, each spoken in 2 voices, the smooth cadence of Galactic Standard and the resurrected pulse of the Proto-Song. "We do not return as invaders. We return as the ones who never left." Humanity was not exiled. It was erased. The message played on loop, not with fury, but with clarity, elegant, unbroken truth. On streets below, crowds stood silent beneath flickering display towers. In temples, old priests wept as their scriptures trembled into new shapes. In barracks, once disciplined soldiers removed their emblems, whispering words they had never dared speak. Inside the Vurothi capital's grand convocation chamber, now converted into a neutral negotiation hub, Lila paced the length of the hall, datapad in hand. Her uniform, clean but still patched from battle, bore no rank insignia. She had removed them deliberately. She wasn't representing Earth anymore. She was representing something older. Behind her, Raheem stood at the balcony, gazing toward the orbital ring above. The sun caught in the clouds behind him, casting a soft halo around his head. He looked worn, but not weary. There was resolve now, a clarity that ran deeper than duty. Lila finally broke the silence. "The Keltar front has mobilized. Trash's faction just declared independence from the High Council. They're calling it a holy reclamation. Raheem didn't flinch. He's desperate. His dogma's crumbling, so he's clinging to the only thing left, conflict. Still, he controls a third of the outer colonies, she said. They've seized the orbital defense grid. If he activates the purification protocols, it won't just target us. It'll wipe the entire capital. That's the plan, Raheem said grimly. If the story collapses, take the world with it. Jor entered the chamber, his ceremonial robes replaced by practical armor, a mix of old priest and new soldier. We've intercepted a transmission. Trash plans to activate the relic weapon known as the Voice of Ash. It's buried in the moon's crust, an orbital pulse cloaked in divine myth. Raheem's eyes narrowed. A broadcast weapon? Not just a signal, Jor replied. It encodes a recursive harmonic designed to fracture language patterns, targeting minds that speak the proto-song. It doesn't kill. It erases. It will shatter cognitive structures, reduce speakers to catatonia. Lila's jaw tightened. He's trying to erase us again. No, Raheem said quietly. This time, he wants to erase the memory of truth before it takes root. He doesn't want silence. He wants amnesia. Jor placed a small, glowing tablet on the table. There's only one way to counter it. You must interface directly with Oran Ka's remains. The fragments still orbit in low atmosphere. If we can sync your voice with its core, you may override the pulse. Lila looked at him sharply. You mean broadcast over it? Exactly. Cancel myth with memory. Raheem nodded slowly. But I'll have to stay connected to the relic's core during the pulse. You might not survive it, Jor said. Raheem turned to Lila. If this works, the weapon won't kill anyone. If it doesn't, Trash won't need to fire again. She didn't respond right away. Her breath caught in her throat. So we're betting everything on one voice. Not just a voice, he said. A remembrance. A short time later, they arrived at the launch dock. A sleek atmospheric glider awaited, already humming with low-energy fields. Raheem adjusted the frequency anchor embedded in his collar. Lila handed him the sealed scroll fragment. If anything goes wrong, then remember this, he interrupted gently. We were never savages, just silence. She reached for his hand and held it tight. Make them remember you, not because you proved them wrong, but because you reminded them who they were. He stepped into the glider. The canopy hissed shut. Moments later, he was gone, rising toward the jagged halo of debris where Oran Ka's fragments still orbited, circling the truth like a celestial graveyard. From the surface, the sky shimmered like a torn veil. A massive ring of light coalesced above the Vurothi moon. Trash's fleet hovered in a precise formation, preparing the final alignment. Inside the weapon core, harmonic stabilizers screamed into position. In his command chamber, Trash watched the timer count down. Begin pre-fire chant, he ordered. Purge their words. Restore the divine silence. But as the countdown reached 5 seconds, another voice filled the chamber. They called us savages, because they feared what we remembered. But our silence was never ignorance. It was waiting. All across the fleet, displays glitched. Command decks froze. The proto-song erupted not as a weapon, but as a harmony, overlaying the destructive pulse with a counterwave encoded in emotional cadence. Raheem's voice spread across every ship, every station, every relay beacon. We were carved into your myths as shadows, but we stood at the dawn with you, and we never stopped singing. Trash screamed, slamming his fist against the controls. Kill the override. Erase it. But it was too late. The weapon's harmonics reversed, no longer erasing memory, but restoring it. Across the fleet, soldiers dropped their weapons, stunned. Their minds were filled with buried verses, ancestral scripts once thought alien, now intimately familiar. And then Oran Ka's last gift bloomed, a projection of Raheem, his body glowing with glyphs surrounded by starlight. You erased us with ink and flame. We return in light and voice. The weapon shattered. The orbital pulse collapsed into harmless static. Silence fell, not imposed but awestruck. Trash stood alone on his trembling deck. The myth was over. Back on Vurothi Prime, Raheem's signal faded. The glider returned with its canopy scorched. Emergency teams pulled the cockpit open. Lilo was the first to reach him. He was alive, barely. His eyes opened slowly, and the first thing he whispered was a single word in the proto-song. Remember. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. We will. Epilogue. Weeks later, the Galactic Treaty was signed. Not between conquerors and the conquered, but between siblings who had finally remembered their shared bloodline. Humanity did not demand tribute. They offered something more powerful. They offered to teach the old songs again. And across the stars, once silent temples sang with new voices. Not in worship, but in truth.